You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to my 2021 NFL free agency recap here on the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk. And before I get too into this, let me just lay out the ground rules for this. I'm going to go team by team, breaking down all the moves that were made in free agency. Yes, that does also include trades. I don't expect this to be completely exhaustive. So if I miss something, I'm either gonna talk about it tomorrow, or it was just really minor and it wasn't worth bringing up. Speaking of tomorrow, obviously I am aware that Elgin Baylor died yesterday. I want to keep this show dedicated solely to the NFL. So I'm going to save my Elgin Baylor eulogy for tomorrow. I'm probably going to lead off with it. On any other show, it would be the lead story. But I promised you an NFL free agency recap, and that's what I'm going to give you. So I'm going to get into it right now. I'll go alphabetically, starting with the Arizona Cardinals. A team that got their free agency started early when they signed J.J. Watt. Obviously a great move. But then when free agency really got off the ground, they lost some really key contributors. Kenyon Drake, gone. Hassan Reddick, gone. Patrick Peterson, gone. They went out and signed A.J. Green, which is incredible. I mean, you take a look at that Cardinals wide receiver core. DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Green, Larry Fitzgerald, assuming he wants to come back for one more year, and Christian Kirk. That's incredible. I mean, I'll say this. I'm concerned that they lost such key contributors, but I fully expect them to draft a running back in the second round. They could even sign one. A guy like Todd Gurley would make sense for him. But you can draft one and you'll be fine. Hassan Reddick was really tough to lose for him. He had a really good year, killed the Giants. And Patrick Peterson has been with that team his whole career. Yeah, that stinks. But obviously they added Watt. They added Green. They traded for Rodney Hudson, which was incredible. You get one of the best centers in the NFL to replace a guy in Mason Cole who just hasn't put it all together, and I don't think he ever will. It's hard to call a third-round pick a bust, but I don't think Cole will ever succeed in the NFL. The Cardinals gave up a third-rounder to get Hudson. It's not like they stole him from the Raiders, but that's a fair price to pay for him. No one can begrudge that at all. I'll say this. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Cardinals made the playoffs next year. They were close to it last year. Kyler Murray's going to get better and better. Cliff Kingsbury, you gotta think, is going to learn from his mistakes. The Cardinals are set up very well for the future. Moving on now to the Atlanta Falcons. A team that really didn't do much in free agency. The only thing they did was replace Todd Gurley with Mike Davis. I know why they did that. Davis did a really good job in filling in for Christian McCaffrey. But I do think Gurley's the better player. I can't begrudge him because Gurley did fade away late in the season. But I don't expect the Falcons to make much noise. Losing Keanu Neal will hurt them, there's no question. But I don't like this idea that Neal is now going to play linebacker. I don't see that working. There were rumors that the Jets wanted him to do that. No. I'll get into it when I get to the Jets. Believe me, there's a lot I want to say. But I was never crazy about that idea. I will say one thing while I brought up the Jets and I'm on the Falcons. If the Jets are going to trade Sam Darnold, and that's a big if, the only team that makes sense to me is the Falcons. Every other team that needed a quarterback made a move at that position. Yes, the Falcons have Matt Ryan, we all know that, but he's not getting any younger. The guy's going to turn 36 in less than 2 months. The Falcons do need a quarterback of the future. It's why you've seen them linked to guys like Justin Fields or Zach Wilson or even Trey Lance. Get a 7th round pick for Darnold and Joe Douglas. I will sing your praises on this show. But going back to the Falcons, they have a tough road ahead of them. I don't see how they're going to be relevant in the near future. Good luck, Arthur Smith. You're going to need it. Moving on now to the Baltimore Ravens. A team that saw 2 of their better-known defensive players in Matt Judon and Yannick Ngakoue sign elsewhere. But they did bring back Tyus Bowser, and they brought in Kevin Zeitler. Bringing back Bowser made a ton of sense. He's a really talented edge rusher, very young, gonna turn 26 in 2 months. Last year, according to Pro Football Focus, he had a 70.2 overall grade. He has a very bright future. We all know that the Ravens are the best team in the NFL in terms of developing defensive players. It seems like they're going to do it again with Bowser. And Zeitler will help Lamar Jackson a lot. The Ravens' starting right guard to finish out the season was Ben Powers. Ben Powers isn't that good. 59.4 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. You replace him with a veteran in Zeitler, a guy with no injury history. Yeah, he took a little bit of a step back last year, but he was still good. 65.9 overall grade. If those are the kinds of seasons that he's going to put up in his 30s, the Ravens have nothing to worry about. Also, the Ravens traded a 7th round pick for Josh Oliver, a guy who I really liked coming out of San Jose State a couple years ago. I understand that his rookie year, he didn't do much of anything and he got hurt his sophomore year, but to give up a 7th rounder for him, that's a worthwhile gamble. So while the Ravens did lose some big names in Judon and Ngakoue, I don't think they're gonna lose much. If any team can weather that storm, it's the Ravens. Oh no, they have to draft a defensive player high. The Ravens love doing that. They're fine. The Ravens have nothing to worry about. I don't know if they're the favorites to win the AFC North. The Browns are obviously really good. And yeah, you have to worry about the Steelers a little bit, but I do think the Ravens will make the playoffs. Moving on now to the Buffalo Bills. A team that really didn't do much in free agency, but they didn't need to. I mean, they didn't have much cap room, but they still brought in a pretty good wide receiver in Emmanuel Sanders. He'll replace John Brown easily. And I read somewhere that the Bills have had their eye on Sanders for a long time. So better late than never, and Sanders can still play. Last year for the Saints, he had 61 catches for 726 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's better than Brown. There's no question about that. I like John Brown, but Sanders is a million times better. Him and Stephon Diggs together, that's a really good wide receiver duo. Also, I will say one thing. They did sign Mitchell Trubisky. Obviously, he's going to be Josh Allen's backup. It's worth noting, though, because it is Trubisky. As a backup, I don't mind Trubisky. He is a competent quarterback. He has made the Pro Bowl. He has made the playoffs twice. Yes, monumental bust. Not worth the 2nd overall pick, especially when you factor in the fact that Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were taken after him. But Trubisky will be a fine backup. Hopefully you never see him. It's kind of hard for me to make a big deal about it. I didn't mind it for the Bills. I really didn't. Moving on now to the Carolina Panthers. A team that I think has had a disappointing offseason. They see Curtis Samuel leave for Washington. He now reunites with Terry McLaurin. Obviously, fantastic move for Washington. I'll get into that at the end of this show. But then they replace him with David Moore. What, just because you have one wide receiver with the last name of Moore that's really good, you think all of them are really good? Look, David Moore's not a bad player. He's really not. Last year he had 35 catches for 417 yards and 6 touchdowns with the Seahawks. But it's a tough pill to swallow that you're replacing a guy like Curtis Samuel with David Moore. A guy who in his 4 years in the NFL has only started 14 games. But you know what? I feel like I could forgive that if the Panthers didn't do the other things they did. They signed Pat Elflein, Cameron Irving, and Morgan Fox. They also signed Hassan Reddick. Great move. Not knocking that at all. But Elflein, Irving, and Fox are dreadful players, okay? I saw Pat Elflein with the Jets. He's not good. The guy last year had a 48 overall grade. He made Alex Lewis look like the second coming of Alan Faneca. Cameron Irving is dreadful. I knew that signing wouldn't work out for the Cowboys. The guy only played in 5 games and was abysmal. 58 overall grade. When I ripped that signing, everyone said, Jacob, you're making too big a deal out of it. No! I was proven right. Irving was useless, and Morgan Fox really isn't that good. He's a decent backup at best. Even then, you could do a lot better than him. 60.3 overall grade last year. And you're giving him a 2-year deal worth $8.1 mil. That's $4 mil a year. He's not worth $4 mil a year. Dreadful job by the Panthers. They'll be helped by the fact that Christian McCaffrey's coming back, but I have a feeling that they're going to be massively overrated as we get closer to September. Moving on now to the Chicago Bears. Oh, do I feel bad for Bears fans. Firstly, you see Roy Robertson Harris leaving free agency. He goes to the Jaguars. Really underrated player. You cut Kyle Fuller. The Broncos snatch him up as quickly as possible. Of course they did. Kyle Fuller's a really good player. Wanted him on the Jets. But the coup de grace was signing Andy Dalton. Presumably to be the starter. I mean, here's what's funny. The Bears could have signed Dalton last year before they traded for Nick Foles. Now they have Foles, and they just signed Dalton for $10 million. There is no GM in the NFL that is worse at evaluating quarterbacks than Ryan Pace. I feel like Matt Nagy gets a really bad rap because of Pace's failures. Nagy has made the playoffs twice. Look, no one's going to be mistaking him for Mike Ditka, but the guy's doing his best to make lemonade out of lemons. I don't think he's a bad coach. I really don't. I mean, this is tough to justify. This is a hard one. This is a really, really hard one. You know that I hate Sam Darnold with a burning passion. But even I'll say that he's a better option than Andy Dalton. Now, I know what the counter to that is. Maybe Joe Douglas was asking for too much. We're a week into free agency and Sam Darnold is still a Jet. If I was Douglas, I'd be motivated to put an end to the Sam Darnold era as quickly as possible. I really think that the Bears just thought that Andy Dalton was better than Sam Darnold. He's not. Look, Dalton's not the worst quarterback in the NFL, but I'd put him on the same plane as Darnold. Darnold's younger. He has more talent. He has more moments that make you think, wow, this guy actually can be a really good quarterback. And he's got a ton of potential. If Matt Nagy is a great coach, give him Darnold. Let's see what he can do with him. That actually excited me. The possibility of Darnold being a Bear, playing under Matt Nagy, playing with Allen Robinson, Jimmy Graham, and David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen too, to decide that Andy Dalton is better than him, that's a hard one. Moving on now to the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that had a weird offseason. Carl Lawson leaves for the Jets. Okay, we're just going to sign Trey Hendrickson. Great job by the Bengals. William Jackson leaves in free agency. Great job by Washington. You replaced him with Chidobe Awuzie and Mike Hilton. That makes sense. I mean, yeah, the Bengals lost some big names. You gotta think that it was tough for Mike Brown to let A.J. Brown walk. He's very loyal, likes keeping his guys around for their whole careers, but he's moved off that recently. He also let John Ross walk. You may be thinking Joe Burrow has no weapons. He still has Tyler Boyd. He still has T. Higgins. And with the 5th overall pick, if they want, they can take Devontae Smith. I just want to say this. The fact that some people are saying that Devontae Smith isn't the best wide receiver in this draft is insane to me. He is. It's not Jamar Chase. It's not Jalen Waddle. It's Smith. Were you watching this guy play? It just defies all logic to me. I think the Bengals are fine. I'm going to be really interested in how Burrow comes back from the injury. And this is a make or break year for Zach Taylor. But the Bengals could make some noise in this coming season. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. They're not. There's too much competition in that division. But 5 or 6 wins isn't out of the question. Moving on now to the Cleveland Browns. They really only made one big move, and that was signing arguably the best safety in free agency in John Johnson III to a 3-year deal worth $33,750,000. Fantastic move for the Browns. I know that Ronnie Harrison had a good year for him last year, 74.7 overall grade. But he is better served as a backup. Carl Joseph failed miserably. I do expect the Browns to let him walk in free agency. Sheldrick Redwine isn't that good. He could get cut. And Andrew Sendejo's a free agent. You put Johnson with Grant Delpit, Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams? That's a secondary with a lot of talent. A lot of potential. Johnson's young. He's 25. Also, there was a report that said that Johnson turned down significantly more money to sign with the Browns. The future is really bright in Cleveland. You know I like Baker Mayfield. They have talent up and down that roster. I think it's going to be a dogfight between the Ravens and Browns for the AFC North. They'll both make the playoffs, but it's going to be very interesting to see who wins that division. Moving on now to the Dallas Cowboys. They made some solid depth moves. They brought back Jordan Lewis. I know he had a bad year last year, but he's shown talent in the past. Every Cowboy had a bad year defensively last year, except DeMarcus Lawrence, Randy Gregory, Donovan Wilson, and Aldon Smith. Trayvon Diggs had a solid rookie year, but that Cowboys defense was dreadful last year. It's hard for me to pin a lot of that on Lewis. He has talent. I didn't mind the Cowboys bringing him back. $4.5 million a year for 3 years, maybe a little bit of an overpay. But I can't bang tables over it. Terrell Basham will help them a lot. Very good rotational edge rusher. Saw him with the Jets a lot. Wanted him back. One of the few bright spots on that defense. That could prove to be an underrated move for the Cowboys. Keanu Neal, I'm a little concerned as to the fit. I just don't know how he's going to do as a linebacker. But if he doesn't work, you have Basham. So, I'm okay with taking that chance. It's hard to get really excited about what the Cowboys did because they focused on depth. But obviously, they have Dak Prescott coming back. He's the best quarterback in that division. By a mile. Not even close. That alone gives the Cowboys a good chance to win that division. It's going to be fun to watch the NFC East. We're not going to have 4 bad teams fighting for first. We're going to have 3 good teams fighting for first. Yes, the Eagles will be last. Moving on now to the Denver Broncos. They really only made a couple big moves, but they were big. They drastically overhauled their defense. They brought in Kyle Fuller, and they brought in Ronald Darby, who I wanted desperately with the Jets. He was the best corner in free agency. The Broncos' corners last year were dreadful. Outside of Bryce Callahan, who's just a slot corner, they had nobody. Michael Ojemudia I liked coming out of Iowa, but he had an atrocious rookie year. Now you've got a cornerback trio of Darby, Fuller, and Callahan. That has a ton of experience. They're all really talented. They can all still play. That's easy to get behind if you're a Broncos fan. Yes, be skeptical about the offense. The jury's still out on Drew Lock. It's not looking good for him. I'm very skeptical, but if you want to give him one more year with a healthy Courtland Sutton, I'm okay with that. And losing Philip Lindsay didn't do much for me. Look, Lindsay's a really good running back. I do like him. But the Broncos did sign Melvin Gordon last year. He did have a better year than Lindsay. They did sign Mike Boone, solid backup. They have Royce Freeman, decent third stringer. It's okay to be upset that Lindsay's gone. Just don't bang tables over it. It did make sense to let him walk. Moving on now to the Detroit Lions, who got absolutely decimated in free agency. Kenny Golladay, gone. Marvin Jones, gone. Jamal Agnew, gone. Jarrad Davis, gone. Matt Prater, gone. I know that the Lions signed Tyrell Williams before free agency started, but it's still tough to see all those guys leave in free agency. Brashad Perryman will help, but who would you rather have? The duo of Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, or the duo of Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perryman? Way to put Jared Goff behind the 8 ball right away, Brad Holmes. They brought back Romeo Okwara. That was a good move. Talented player, turned his career around after he left the Giants. And Michael Brockers will help to beef up that defensive line. But it's tough to be really optimistic about the Lions. I know that they are going with a reload. They weren't looking to be competitive this year. I just don't like that you're not putting Jared Goff in a good position to succeed. I just fear that he's gonna have an implosion of epic proportions. Moving on now to the Green Bay Packers. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. They didn't do much except see Corey Linsley sign with the Chargers. You knew he wasn't going to go back to Green Bay, but it's still tough to see him go. Bringing Kenny King back makes no sense. The guy got burned in the NFC title game on every play. It's another year of not surrounding Aaron Rodgers with talent. Will the Packers be good? The answer is yes. They have Aaron Rodgers. But it's hard to think of them as anything more than just your average run-of-the-mill playoff team. I can't see them making a big run. Moving on now to the Houston Texans. And you've got to commend Nick Caserio for drastically overhauling this roster. I would need a whole show to go through all of the moves they've made. Caserio needed to rejigger that roster. He's done it. No complaints there. Having said all that, Deshaun Watson is still a Texan, and that situation has taken an unexpected turn. And when I say unexpected, I mean this is so far out of left field that we're about 2,000 yards past the left field parking lot. Deshaun Watson currently has 13 lawsuits pending against him from massage therapists who say that he sexually assaulted them. Again, it would require a whole show to properly go through those allegations. The one thing I'll say is, it's tough to trade for a franchise quarterback when he has 13 pending lawsuits against him. I mean, let's say that Nick Caserio called Joe Douglas and said, you can have Deshaun Watson for just the second overall pick. That's it. That's all we want. You now need to think about it. I mean, I'll tell you, there will be a subset of fans, regardless of where Watson gets traded to. Jets, Panthers, Dolphins, wherever. That will say, I don't care. I want to win football games. This guy will help me do that. I just won't let my wife, daughter, sister, whoever, be in a room alone with him. And I'm not saying that's right, but that subset of fans does exist. There's another subset that's going to say, you know what, I wanted Deshaun Watson, now I don't. This is just too hard to look past. There's yet another subset, though, that's going to say, I didn't want him anyway. This is just adding fuel to the fire. I'm personally of the opinion that I want these cases to play out a little bit. I know it's hard to not believe 13 women. I'm not saying that these women are lying. I just want to let the cases play out in court before I cast judgment. Let's just let the lawsuits unfold. But I'll say this, the real winners are the Texans. Because they can very easily say, hey, we had trade discussions involving you. We lowered our asking price. No team wanted you because of these lawsuits. If you want to play football, you have no choice but to play here. Can Watson just sit out regardless? The answer is yes, but I don't think he will. It's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out. Moving on now to the Indianapolis Colts. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. They made their big move early by trading for Carson Wentz. Talked about that previously. They saw Danico Autry go to the Titans. Yeah, it hurts to lose him, but he's not Robert Mathis or anything. He can be replaced in the draft. That doesn't bother me. They brought back Xavier Rhodes. He would have made sense for the Jets. The Colts will hover around 6-10 all year. I don't see them making a lot of noise. Let's see if Carson Wentz can be fixed. Moving on now to the Jacksonville Jaguars. A team with gobs and gobs of cap space. And you know what? They used it. They signed Shaq Griffin. Really good move. very good corner. They signed Rayshawn Jenkins, very good move. Very underrated safety. They signed Roy Robertson Harris. Very good move. Spoke about him when I was talking about the Bears. They overpaid for Jamal Agnew. They overpaid for Chris Manhertz. But you know what? They replaced Keelan Cole with Marvin Jones. The point is, the Jaguars had gobs and gobs of cap space and they used it about as well as you could expect them to. They also traded for Malcolm Brown. They brought in a good running back in Carlos Hyde. That's the right way to use cap space. Nothing drives me more nuts than when I see these teams create cap space and not use any of it. Like the Jets. Don't worry, I'll get into them a little later. But I'll say this. The AFC South doesn't scare me. The Texans aren't going to be that great. Same thing with the Colts. The Titans will be really good. But a team like the Jaguars could surprise you. They could finish second in that division. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. But if Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback that we all think he's going to be, he can lead the Jaguars back to respectability next year. Moving on now to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I have absolutely no idea how they had the cap space necessary to sign Joe Thuney. Oh my God, that was a fantastic move. Patrick Mahomes had to be doing backflips. There is no question that that offensive line still needs help. But you know what? They have Lucas Niang and Lauren Duvernay-Tardif coming back from sitting out the season. I'd expect them to target offensive linemen in the draft. And I'm okay with that. They have Patrick Mahomes. Everything else will work itself out. My buddy Nick, big Chiefs fan. He's saying to me, hey, I'm worried about the future. What's it going to be like in a couple years when all these restructured contracts end up biting the Chiefs in the butt? Worry about it then. Cross the bridge when you get there. What's the alternative? You don't go all in to win with Patrick Mahomes? The Chiefs are fine. Don't worry about it. Moving on now to the Las Vegas Raiders. And they've had a really confusing offseason. Just this month, they've traded 3 of their offensive linemen. Trent Brown is now a Patriot. Rodney Hudson is now a Cardinal. And Gabe Jackson is now a Seahawk. You take a look at that offensive line now, it is shaky to say the least. You've got Colton Miller, who had a really good year last year. 72.9 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. He's gotten better and better every year he's been in the league. He'll be fine. Then you've got Richie Incognito, not getting any younger. Andre James. No one except John Gruden and Mike Mayock know anything about him. Denzel Good stinks. 56.7 overall grade last year. And you have no right tackle on the roster. The Raiders made some moves in free agency. They signed Yannick Ngakoue. They signed Kenyon Drake. They signed Solomon Thomas. Okay, fine. Where's the offensive line? Derek Carr is going to be running for his life on every play. John Gruden's gotten a lot of heat for being this big money coach that hasn't made the playoffs yet with the Raiders in his second stint there. I've defended Gruden. This is a hard one. I don't get it. I don't know what they're doing. Moving on now to the LA Chargers. Give them a ton of credit. They have made a concerted effort to protect Justin Herbert. They have their guy. Going from Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert seamlessly, that's the stuff that dreams are made of, to quote the Maltese Falcon. When you have that guy, you need to protect him. The Chargers have done that. Corey Linsley was the best center in free agency. He's one of the best centers in the NFL. Matt Filer is a really good left guard. Does the Chargers O-line still need some work? The answer is yes. But this is a great start. Herbert had to love these moves. Really, job well done by the Chargers. I'll skip over the LA Rams. They lost a lot of people in free agency. In fact, the only guy that they signed was Deshaun Jackson. That's a good move. But it's hard for me to bang tables over that because the Rams really had no cap space. At this very moment, they have just over $10 million in cap space. They really couldn't afford to keep guys like Johnson, Samson Ebukam, Troy Hill, etc., etc. The Rams traded for Matthew Stafford. They have Sean McVay. They have Cooper Kupp. They have Robert Woods. They'll be fine. Moving on now to the Miami Dolphins. And really the only notable move they made was signing Will Fuller. That made perfect sense. Fuller, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Jakeem Grant, and Isaiah Ford. You've got something there. They also traded for Benardrick McKinney. That made sense. I'm a little down on the Dolphins. The Patriots got a lot better. The Bills are going to be really good for a long time. It's hard for me to see them making a lot of noise. But I do think Tua will work out. I just want to say that. I think Tua is going to be a great quarterback in this league. Moving on now to the Minnesota Vikings. They did a good job in beefing up their defense. They added two really talented players in Dalvin Tomlinson and Patrick Peterson. Sure, they lost Kyle Rudolph, but they were going to let him go anyway. They lost Riley Reif, they were going to let him go anyway. The Vikings added some talented players. It's very possible that they can be a wildcard team next year. Moving on now to the New England Patriots. And I don't think Bill Belichick likes missing the playoffs. I don't think he liked seeing Brady win without him. So in response to that, Belichick went on a spending spree, the likes of which he's never done before. bringing in Matt Judon, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Jalen Mills, Nelson Aguilar, Devon Godchaux, Kendrick Bourne, Kyle Van Noy, Henry Anderson, Ted Karras, and Montravius Adams. I mean, my God! The Patriots never do this. They never go hog wild in free agency like this. They've made big moves in free agency before, like Stephon Gilmore. But they've never gone on a spending spree like this. And I do think it will help them. They added great players. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith will be the second coming of Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. Matt Judon will be a wrecking ball off the edge. Jalen Mills will be an anchor in that secondary. Nelson Aguilar had a really good year last year. He's turned his career around. They brought back Kyle Van Noy to where he had his best seasons. It's very tough to confidently pick the Patriots since they have Cam Newton as their quarterback. But I'm going to make a bold prediction. The Patriots will take a quarterback in the first round. It will be either Trey Lance, Kyle Trask, or Mac Jones. And that guy will start the lion's share of the games. How's that for a hot take? I'll skip over the Saints because they didn't do anything. They didn't have any cap space. We all knew that. Drew Brees officially retired. I was happy to see it. Let him start his waiting period for Canton. That brings me to the New York Giants. Now, you know me. I hate the Giants. I really do. I want them to lose forever. They had a great offseason. Oh, did it infuriate me seeing how great an offseason they had. They locked up Leonard Williams long term. Of course he turned his career around with the freaking Giants. Of course. Why did I think that would be a win for the Jets? Daniel Jones now gets to throw to Kenny Golladay. For my money, the best wide receiver in free agency. Realize, Robinson and Godwin were franchise tagged. He'll look like the second coming of Plaxico Burress. Golladay, Shepard, and Slayton, and John Ross too? Oh, that's scary. You add a Dory Jackson to a secondary that already has James Bradbury, Jabril Peppers, Logan Ryan, Darnay Holmes, and Xavier McKinney. That's lethal. And you've got Saquon Barkley coming back. It is very possible that the New York Giants will win the NFC East. I'm not saying it's going to happen definitively, but it is a distinct possibility. Dave Gettleman doesn't draft well. I'm still not confident in Daniel Jones. And I think Joe Judge is overrated. I'm not saying he's bad. But he thinks he's Bill Belichick. He's not. Same thing with Brian Flores. How about this? Win some of those close games. It's not enough to lose close. How about you win those close games? How's that for a novel concept? This is a make-or-break year for everyone with the Giants. If Jones can't put it all together this year, he's gone. If that happens, Gettleman's gone. And if that happens, Judge is gone. But I will say this. The Giants have a great chance to make the playoffs. That brings us to the New York Jets. And please indulge me, because I've been waiting for a week to do this. The Jets have not had a bad offseason. They really haven't. They needed a number one wide receiver. They got a number one wide receiver in Corey Davis. Is he on the lower end of number one wide receivers? The answer is yes, but he's still on that list. He's the best wide receiver the Jets have had since Brandon Marshall. Carl Lawson was the best 4-3 defensive end in free agency. The Jets got him. I was doing backflips when I saw that. That made me happier than Davis. They signed Sheldon Rankins to beef up the defensive line. I'm a little confused as to the positional fit there. Rankins is a solid young defensive tackle. I'm not knocking him. But the Jets have those guys in Quinnen Williams and Foley Fatukasi. Unless the plan is to move Fatukasi to defensive end, Lawson becomes a stand-up edge rusher. I'm not crazy about that. I don't see that working. I think that was more for depth. The Jets do have pretty good depth now at some pretty key positions. Defensive line and wide receiver. Because they signed Keelan Cole also. Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder, and Keelan Cole. That's a really good wide receiver core. It's not great, but it's really good. But there is still work to do. And that's okay, because this is just the second week of free agency. So I'm not going too nuts. I was going nuts when I saw Thuney and Lindsley sign elsewhere, and the Jets had done nothing but sign Jared Davis. Which I didn't like, by the way. I just don't think Davis is that good. They also have some pretty good tight end depth. I like Chris Herndon. I'm willing to give him another shot. They signed Tyler Kroft. Very talented when healthy. They have Trayvon Wesco, solid blocking tight end. They're probably going to cut Ryan Griffin at some point. But the Jets do need to do some more work. I'm not as gung-ho on them upgrading the offensive line as some people. I didn't think the offensive line was dreadful last year. It wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. It could be improved, but you have bigger fish to fry. You still need an edge rusher to play with Jabari Zuniga and C.J. Mosley. Jadeveon Clowney would make sense. Olivier Vernon would make sense. I just want to give that pass rush another really, really, really good player. Been a long time since the Jets have had a good pass rush. I'm sick of talking about John Abraham. The biggest thing is cornerbacks. As it stands right now, these are the Jets' corners. Bless Austin, Bryce Hall, Javelin Guidry, Justin Hardy, Corey Ballantyne, Kyron Brown, Bennett Jackson, Lamar Jackson, and Zane Lewis. Shades of 2014. Again, it's early, and there weren't any great corners in free agency anyway. I like Ronald Darby and I like William Jackson, but those guys aren't Darrelle Revis and Deion Sanders. I'll say this. If the Jets bring back Brian Poole and sign Malcolm Butler, I'll be fine with that. You can draft a cornerback in the first round at like 23. J.C. Horn out of South Carolina would make sense. You could even trade down from 2 and take a guy like Patrick Surtain or Caleb Farley. Corey Davis said that he was under the impression that Sam Darnold is going to be the Jets starter next year. That tells me that the Jets are going to be trading down from 2. And let me just say that I'm okay with that. I understand the logic of giving Sam Darnold one more year if you really think you have all the pieces in place. I understand that the Jets did everything wrong in building around Sam Darnold. So I understand the logic of build around him properly and let's see if he can reach some of that potential. Do I think it's going to happen? The answer is no. I do think that's going to fail, but I understand the logic. I'll say this, if you're going to go that route, you better sign a good backup quarterback like C.J. Beathard. It's still early, but if the Jets do all those things, they can sign Mitchell Schwartz and replace George Fant. They can sign Austin Ritter and move Connor McGovern over to right guard and cut Greg Van Roten. And if they trade down and get Surtain and pair him with guys like Butler, Poole, and Guidry, I'm fine with that. That team's not going to make the playoffs, but they'll hold their own. There will be a nucleus in place that when you inevitably upgrade a quarterback, can get you into the playoffs. Moving on now to the Philadelphia Eagles. They really didn't do much of anything except they replaced Jalen Mills with Anthony Harris. Certainly a cheaper option, arguably a better option. That's really the only thing I can talk about in regards to what they've done this offseason. I spoke about them trading Carson Wentz last month. The Eagles are going to be dreadful. They'll be lucky to get 4 wins. It made sense to replace Mills with Harris, but it's going to be tough sledding in Philly. Moving on now to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They didn't have a lot of cap space, so they saw a lot of their guys leave. Bud Dupree gone, Mike Hilton gone, and Matt Filer gone. But they did bring Juju Smith-Schuster back, which kind of confused me. I like Smith-Schuster. There's no question. I just didn't think the Steelers needed him. They had Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and James Washington. Save the money and add a left tackle or a nose tackle. Bad job by the Steelers in using their limited resources. Also, for whatever it's worth, I didn't want Smith-Schuster on the Jets. Signing him meant that the Jets would have had to cut Jamison Crowder. Juju's better than Crowder. There's no question. But I don't think there's a stark difference between the two. Go out and address your biggest needs, then get better around the edges. Moving on now to the San Francisco 49ers, who shocked the world by giving Trent Williams a mammoth contract. He's going to turn 33 before the season starts. Yet the Niners signed him to a 6-year deal worth $138,060,000. That is over $23 million a year. I know that the Niners had cap space, but my God, you can't give Trent Williams $130 million. He is now the highest paid offensive lineman in terms of total value by almost $40 million. That is insane. When the contract ends, he's going to be 38. I know that Williams is a great left tackle, probably the best left tackle in the game. I get that. But you cannot give him $130 million. That is insane. There's no way that's going to work. I mean, what is with the Niners signing all these old offensive linemen? They signed Alex Mack, too. Look, Alex Mack is still a really good center. There was a point in time when he was the best center in the NFL. It was really sad to see him and Joe Thomas waste their talents on those god-awful Browns teams. But he gave him a 3-year deal. That makes no sense. They signed Samson Ebukam, too, who has talent. Didn't have a good year last year. 56.9 overall grade last year. But he has talent. It's just tough for me to get behind this Niners offseason. It wouldn't surprise me if they finished in last place in that division. Especially without Robert Saleh. Hopefully Kyle Shanahan will be fired and Garoppolo will be traded. Because I think both those guys are really, really bad. Moving on now to the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, they saw Shaq Griffin go to the Jaguars, but they did bring back Chris Carson. That made perfect sense. I always liked Carson. And they brought in Gerald Everett, who will do a great job replacing Jacob Hollister. You've got Everett and Will Dissly together. That's pretty good. The Seahawks are fine. They're going to give Wilson some talent to work with offensively. They traded for Gabe Jackson. I've said this before. Rumors of that breakup were greatly exaggerated. I never believed it. I'll skip over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They didn't do anything except bring a few of their big Super Bowl winning contributors back. They had to do it. It was pretty obvious that that's what they were going to do. They brought back Shaq Barrett, Ryan Suckup, and Rob Gronkowski. They franchise tagged Chris Godwin. They signed Levante David to a big extension. The Buccaneers are fine. We all know this. That brings us to the Tennessee Titans, who made some big moves to improve their defense. bringing in Bud Dupree on a 5-year deal worth $82.5 million, and Denico Autry on a 3-year deal worth $21.5 million. But I gotta tell you, the Bud Dupree move made no sense to me. I've always felt that Dupree has been a little overrated. The guy only has 2 seasons where his Pro Football Focus grade has been over 61. Last year he had a 60.2 overall grade. You're giving this guy $16.5 million a year. That puts him in the upper echelon of edge rushers. He's not there. There were rumors he could go to the Jets. I didn't want Dupree on the Jets. The Steelers had to be happy about that. Great, you pay him. We're okay with letting him walk. Bad job by the Titans. And they've been really good recently. That's upsetting to see them make this type of mistake. Autry will help them, though. 62.5 overall grade last year. Has been a really good defensive end for a long time. Hey, you could have switched it. You could have given Autry Dupree's contract and Dupree Autry's contract. I would have been okay with it. But they overpaid for Dupree a lot. Jonnu Smith went to the Patriots. Adoree Jackson went to the Giants. Corey Davis went to the Jets. The Titans will make the playoffs because the AFC South is bad. But they're not going to do anything when they get there. I'm telling you. There's an opening for the Jaguars to surprise some people. I'll give them like a 2% chance to win the division. The last team to talk about is the Washington football team. A team that may have had the best free agency out of all these teams. Either them or the Patriots. They see Ronald Darby leave for the Broncos. What do? They sign William Jackson. There are games when Terry McLaurin is doubled on every play. He needs some help. They add his old OSU teammate Curtis Samuel. They need some competition at quarterback. They signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let me just say this. I don't know who I'd rather have, Sam Darnold or Ryan Fitzpatrick. For the future, Darnold, there's no question. Because God only knows how long Fitzpatrick is going to keep playing. But even then, that only matters if Darnold pans out. For the present, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is the better quarterback. If Washington really believes that Taylor Heinicke can be their quarterback of the future, then yeah, sign Fitzpatrick. Don't trade for Darnold. That makes perfect sense. Let them compete. Let them duke it out in training camp and preseason. Let's see who wins. I hope it's Heinicke. I think a lot of Washington fans want it to be Heinicke. You want to see what he can do for an extended period rather than Fitzpatrick. But if Heinicke implodes, you've got a solid option in Fitzpatrick. He's not going to embarrass himself out there. Washington usually has aggressive free agencies, but it's very rare that you can say this. They did it right. It's going to be a dogfight for that NFC East title once again. Tomorrow, I'm going to start off the show with the Elgin Baylor eulogy. And then I'll probably break down all the newer moves in NFL free agency. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that the best way to avoid ball players is to go to a good restaurant.